Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson, and welcome to the Spooky-Doo Retrospectives, the first video of this year's Halloween videos. So, what will we be starting off this vlog series with? Well, if you can't tell by the title of the video, today we are going to be taking a look at Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island, the first of the direct-to-video films that was released in I'm going to call it the modern era of the Scooby-Doo movies. I say modern, but this film actually came out in 1998. And so, yeah, it's pretty old by the time I'm doing this vlog. However, it is also fondly remembered. Many people look back at the Scooby-Doo movie and do have some legitimately positive memories about it. They figure it's one of the better animated Scooby-Doo movies, and genuinely like to go back to it on many occasions. And I'd be lying if I said I don't blame them. In fact, the film was actually so popular of a movie that Warner Brothers decided to actually make a direct sequel to it, entitled Scooby-Doo Return to Zombie Island. I haven't heard good things about that. Apparently a retcon shit. I don't plan to ever watch it. But I have seen this film, and sometime earlier this year I was able to procure it at a half-price book. So now that I actually own it and I'm able to watch it as an adult, is it any good? Is it worth all the time, even though I just said it was? Well, let's actually get more into specifics about that as we take a look at Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island. And of course, before we actually get to my thoughts on the thing, we need to get to our plot summary. And the film actually starts out with Mystery Inc. doing their own thing. They're investigating a haunted castle, or being chased by this creature called the Moat Monster, which is this big green thing with sharp claws that chases them throughout the corridors, trying to slash the gang apart. And which leads to the legitimately good opening sequence, as throughout the chase we actually get this good, awesome rock cover of the Scooby-Doo Where Are You theme. So it's neat, I like it. But of course, it eventually ends with the monster being captured as Scooby in the chase accidentally knocks over suits of armor, which all comes crashing down on the monster, revealing that it isn't actually a real estate agent who was using the castle as a base of operations for him to print counterfeit bills. Which, of course, he damns the Scooby-Doo gang by calling them meddling kids, and then we cut to the present day. Yeah, it turns out that little sequence was actually a flashback. The real timeline of the story takes place like a few years after the gang's heyday, as it turns out that the gang they've split up. Basically, as the gang grew older, they kind of grew tired of constantly hunting fake ghouls, ghosts, and monsters, and eventually they decided to pack it in, split up, and move on with their lives. That doesn't mean they stopped being friends. They're still friends, it's just that they're not Mystery Inc. anymore. In fact, the only members of the gang who stuck together, so to speak, were Daphne and Fred. Everyone else just kind of went off and found different jobs. Like Velma wound up opening a mystery bookshop where of course, all of her books are usually scary stories that people tend to reserve in advance. Scooby and Shaggy have been just kind of jumping from job to job, with their latest find being customs inspections at an airport, which they get fired from immediately because they ate all the illegal contraband food. And then likewise, Daphne actually has her own news show called Coast to Coast with Daphne Blake, which she's not really doing at the moment. In fact, the whole framing device for the story for the thing we saw at the beginning of the movie about the gang dealing with the Mo Monster, that was a story she was telling while she was being interviewed on a talk show. And basically, while she remembers the time with Mystery Inc. fondly, she like I said, she got tired of dealing with all the fake ghouls and ghosts and kind of wanted to see some real stuff, and so that's why that's why she split up, and that's why she wound up eventually getting her own news show. Sorry, Chindy came in. However, like I said, Fred is still with her, and he actually acts as both her manager and on-site cameraman, being her only crew for her show. And yeah, he's off camera right there, and they immediately show him. Which I find nice. But it turns out that part of the reason why Daphne is bringing all this up and why she's on the talk show is because she's introducing a new segment for her news station. It's called Haunted America. Her plan to pretty much go coast to coast across the good old US of A and find some real spooks and spirits. Hopefully get their stories and have them broadcasted on her station, which she's excited for. Even the lady that's interviewing her, Charlie, asks her, I think it's Charlie, whatever. The lady asks Daphne if it's anything like the good old days, which Daphne does kind of feel nostalgic for, but she does lament that she won't be traveling with the rest of the gang. However, this sparks an idea in Fred, and as a result, he ends up calling the other members of Mystery Inc. back, as he calls Velma while she's in her shop, and he calls Scooby and Shaggy immediately after they got fired. And so basically, what he wants to do is just have everyone meet up. Why? Because, well, it turns out that Daphne going off on her Haunted America trip, it also happens to coincide with her birthday, and what a better birthday surprise than reuniting with the old gang. Which immediately happens is on the day that Daphne and Fred are all going to go off to do the whole Haunted America trip. Fred rolls up in their news van, and inside is Velma, Shaggy, and Scooby, who are there to surprise her. Which, it's a nice, happy reunion. They're all good. They're all it's all sweet, joyous, kind of cute, and even to kind of commemorate the occasion, Velma ends up giving Scooby and Shaggy some Scooby snacks. Very old Scooby snacks. She openly admits that she's been saving the box of Scooby snacks for a while, and apparently they've gone stale. So, yuck. Yuck. But either way, yep, pretty much the celebration is they're going to join her on her Haunted America trip. Essentially, it is quite literally just getting the gang back together. Even to commemorate the occasion, Fred actually rebranded their news van into a brand new mystery machine. And so, the gang is back up and running, and their first stop on their trip for Haunted America is Louisiana, specifically New Orleans, because there are some scary, spooky stories going around New Orleans, and Daphne wants to see if they can find a real ghost among all these hauntings. And so, from there, the movie then ends up going to a little... Hold on, Sorry, blanked on the word for a second. But yeah, the movie then does a little montage as Mystery Inc. ends up going through Louisiana, just investigating all these different haunting spots, so to speak. Which is also accompanied by an honestly kick-ass song called "The Ghost Is Here," which basically the main point of both the montage and the song, none of it's real. Like, everywhere that the gang goes, basically every haunting they find is a joke, a jab, a sideshow attraction, or basically some criminal who's trying to use the haunting in order to smuggle diamonds or commit some kind of illegal act, so to speak. Basically, no matter where they go, it's just another creep in a mask. Which while the rest of the gang is okay with, because again, it's their normal shtick, it's what they're used to. Daphne kind of gets sick of it, because again, that was part of the reason why Mystery Inc. broke up in the first place. That's all they encountered, just creeps in costumes. She wants real haunts. She wants real danger. She wants a story for her news segment. And, well, eventually she seems to get one. As while the gang is making a pit stop at a market to gather supplies, they end up running into a woman there by the name of Lena. Hold on. Apologies, chingy stuff. But yeah, like I said, they encounter a woman by the name of Lena Duprat. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing the name. The last name, they only said it like once in the movie. But Lena explains that she is employed at a mansion on an island in a bayou. The island is called Moonscar Island, and apparently it's actually haunted by ghosts. Specifically, the ghost of a dead pirate ship captain by the name of Morgan Moonscar. And apparently that ghost is very lively. And basically, the instant that Daphne hears this, she's immediately invested and wants to know more. As such, Lena invites the gang to come back with her to Moonscar Island to investigate, and the gang snatches it up. Of course, Velma and Daphne are very much skeptical of the whole idea of it being an actual ghost, but again, it's still a lead, so they decide to take it. On top of that, there's still some mystery surrounding the island, as after they're invited, Velma does some snooping into it, and it turns out the island is famous for one very big thing. Apparently, people have vanished there over the years, basically it's clear something strange is going on. So hey, they are invested. And as such, Velma, Daphne, and Fred end up grabbing Scooby and Shaggy after the pair try and get food, and so everyone piles into the mystery machine and follows Lena to the bayou, where both vehicles end up going onto a ferry run by a man named Jacques, who pretty much just is the bayou ferryman who brings Lena to and from the mainland. As such, they end up going through the bayou, and along the way, they run into a few more shenanigans, as they end up running into a catfish called Big Mona, which is supposed to be the biggest catfish of all, and in Scooby's attempt to try and get the catfish, because it kept splashing him, Scooby and Shaggy fell into the bayou, were nearly eaten by alligators before being saved by a really creepy looking fisher by the name of Snakebite, who's apparently been spending years hunting Big Mona. And while he did save Scooby and Shaggy, he also makes it clear he's not a fan of tourists, and he tells him to get the hell off his boat. As such, they end up dropping them back. As such, they do get back on the ferry, and the ferry does manage to make its way to Moonscar Island, with Mystery Inc. and Lena taking their respective vehicles and going to the plant and going inside. And yeah, we end up seeing more of the island, and apparently it's not just home to a mansion, but a plantation, specifically a plantation of peppers, some of the hottest peppers in Louisiana, according to the owner of the island, a woman by the name of Simone Lenoir, this aristocratic French woman who very much, on her first appearance, is a woman that demands your attention, as she speaks sternly but softly, and it's actually a really nice way of setting her up. Actually, to be fair, the first time you see her, she's yelling at the gang because, well, Simone likes cats. And I mean, she really likes cats. Like, the island is crawling with them, and Scooby, being a dog, immediately starts chasing after the cats, which of course leads to him jumping out of the mystery machine, chasing them around the place, wrecking her gardens, before eventually he accidentally crashes into Simone when her cats go to her for defense. As such, Lena introduces Mystery Inc. to Simone, and while at first Daphne thinks Simone knows her because, hey, it's Daphne Blake from the Coast to Coast show, Simone admits she has no idea what the hell she's talking about. She doesn't have a TV, and so she has never seen Coast to Coast with Daphne Blake. However, when Lena explains that she brought them along because they want to see the haunting, Simone is like, oh, really? Well, then you're welcome to come inside. Of course, before they go in, we do end up meeting another future suspect. Sorry, that was my echo just reacting to something. They do meet another future suspect as they're going around the island. Specifically, a gardener by the name of Bo, who apparently has been working at the island for several months. Which, that's really I'm going to mention on him till later. But either way, the gang is welcomed into Simone's manor, though as Velma, Daphne, and Fred are examining all the nice antiquities and just kind of unique scenery, well, Scooby and Shaggy go to the kitchen, mostly because Simone doesn't want Scooby going after her cats, and Shaggy mentions how the best thing to keep him occupied is food. So she says, you're welcome to my kitchen, go nuts. So they immediately go inside, and they do find that Lena has been cooking some gumbo, and she does say they can help themselves if they want. And so Scooby and Shaggy do end up helping themselves to some gumbo, though to try and spice it up, they do mix in some of the Moonscar peppers, which are apparently so hot that it causes them to scream, where they both just start chugging any water they can find, which does get the gang's attention, but once they learn it's peppers, they just kind of brush it off. As such, once everyone leaves Scooby and Shaggy alone again, they immediately start daring each other to try and start chewing on more peppers. But as they're doing this dare, the air in the kitchen suddenly gets a lot chillier, which confuses the pair of goofballs. And so as they try to warm themselves up by eating a pepper, they hear some scraping behind them. And when they turn around, they see a ball of light with a strange wispy line of smoke that leads right to the wall, and the end of the smoke is carving the words "Get Out" into it, causing the pair to scream once again before hiding in the pantry. As such, with Simone, Lena, and the rest of the gang follow after them, at first thinking it's the pepper thing, but Scooby and Shaggy end up saying no, that they saw something weird as they point to those strange letters written on the kitchen wall. Of course, when Daphne sees these things, she immediately just goes all nuts as she thinks, oh my god, a real haunting! This is going to be amazing! She tells Fred to get the camera ready. She asks Simone to stand next to her as she gets in the shot, and so immediately Daphne goes straight into news reporter mode as she stands in front of the writing, has Fred filming her as she just talks about all the weird letters and so forth, before suddenly she's hit by a gust of cold air and tells Fred to cut. Only when they look at the letters on the wall again, a new word has been added. Beware. So, yeah, it's clear that something's rotten in Denmark. Not helped by the fact that when everyone looks back at the footage, when everyone goes to look back at the recorded footage, they notice something a little off in it. And when they begin enhancing the footage to see what it is, they soon find the one who was carving the extra words. Yes, it was indeed a ghost. The ghost of Morgan Moonscar, and I will give credit where it's due. It's a creepy ghost. Like, you can just see him rotten. Like, he's got glowing eyes. He's got, like, you can see the glowing eyes. You can see the scar around his face, which that's the reason why he got the name Morgan Moonscar, because he has a scar around his eye that looks like a crescent moon. You can see his teeth pulled back. He very much looks like a dead guy. He very much looks like a creepy, decrepit dead guy. And the fact that he only appeared on the camera at all, it makes it even more chilling. Of course, Fred and Velma, still being the skeptics, try and think of rational explanations, with Fred pushing the whole, he's just some guy in a pirate suit who filmed a hologram to ultimately be on top, so that he could ultimately be, so that he could, scare everyone off the island. But of course, everyone is still skeptical. But of course, Scooby and Shaggy are taking the hint. They're thinking, well, this guy clearly wants us off the island, so you know what? Let's just leave. Well, I mean, they don't leave the island, so to speak, but they do leave the mansion, as they immediately just grab as much food as they can and then just go and set up a picnic outside, while everyone else stays inside and investigates. While there is still some more supernatural goings-on, which I forgot to mention, as before everyone went back to review the footage, Velma started floating, which no one has an explanation for that, but as Scooby and Shaggy are leaving the kitchen, Velma comes back in to take a look at the writing. And it's there that she notices something strange about the wall that the words were carved on, as she starts kind of chipping away at the paint and realizes there's something underneath here. As such, she grabs a spatula and starts scraping off more of the wall paint, and it turns out that section of the wall is a pirate ship, or more specifically, it's parts of a pirate ship. Specifically, and I'm sorry, I do want to look this up because I did write it down. The pirate ship is called... What was it again? I didn't write it down. But point is... I forget. Didn't write it down. Sorry about that. But point is, it's Morgan Moonscar's pirate ship. And basically, Simone mentions how the mansion is pretty old, so odds are maybe they used parts of the ship when they were building it. Yeah, that kind of adds more to the creep factor as well. However, outside with Shaggy and Scooby, as the pair are continuing to enjoy their picnic, they end up getting some trouble in the form of more cats that come in and start eating some of the potato salad they had. And Scooby, again, being a dog, ends up chasing after them and chases them all around the island. And Shaggy ends up chasing after him to try and stop him, though he gets distracted as he starts picking peppers. Although, as Scooby ends up going around, he accidentally ends up disrupting the fishing of Snakebite, who is still trying to catch Big Mona. And in anger, Snakebite sticks his hunting pig Mojo on Scooby, which leads to the pig chasing Scooby and eventually Shaggy around the island, a bit of hijinks, before the pair end up falling into a large hole that looks like it's a big grave. As such, with the pair trapped, Mojo abandons the hunt, but now it's really a matter of how are the two going to get out of the hole. They start trying to climb the side as they grab onto loose vines, but as they grab one, it causes a part of the hole to kind of open up and start caking the two with dirt. And the two see what's inside the smaller hole. They see a skeletal arm, which of course already causes the pair of cowards to freak out, before suddenly they start hearing a weird noise, and when they look up to the surface of the hole they fell into, they see a green mist circling around them in bright light before it flies right into the hole and zeroes in right on the skeletal arm. And from it, a whole skeleton falls out of that patch of the earth, and then just suddenly assembles itself right in front of the two. The eerie glow just coating around it, and suddenly the skeleton starts not being so skeletal anymore, as rotting flesh starts appearing over its body alongside ripped and tattered clothes, before finally the skeleton now forms into the zombified form of Captain Morgan Moonscar. And again, it's fucking creepy. It's not like completely gruesome or whatever, but I remember when I first saw this scene as a kid, even I was just creeped the hell out by how disturbing this thing looked. Like the rotting, like the sagging flesh, the way you can tell that it's clear, the faded skin, the way it moves just so jaggedly, as if the motor functions clearly aren't functioning. And what makes it better, it doesn't, the zombie does not talk. All it does is just moan, going, it's like really fucking creepy, and it makes it even better is that the voice kind of echoes, giving it a very ghostly feel. It's just It's creepy, and I dig it. But either way, the zombie Morgan Moonscar immediately starts zeroing in on Scooby and Shaggy, and the pair, now powered by fear, manage to muster up enough strength to climb out of the hole and make a run for it, with the zombie hobbling after them as it climbs out too. As they run off, they end up running into Bo, who wants to know what the hell they're doing. But it's from there that the rest of the gang, plus Simone and Lena, end up meeting back up with them because they heard the screaming and wanted to know what was going on. As such, Scooby and Shaggy do their typical shenanigans of letting them know what they saw, but nobody believes them because the monster's already gone. But they do end up bringing them back to the hole and explain how they fell right into it and how afterwards they ran into Bo. So naturally, eyes are on Bo as they want to know what the hell he was doing out here. He mentions how he was digging a hole to plant flowers, but naturally there's still another question. Why the hole? Because clearly he was the one that dug that giant ass hole. But why would he dig a hole that big just to plant some flowers? Which, when asked that question, Bo just goes silent and walks away, grumbling to himself. So clearly the dude's hiding something, but we don't know what. However, that's immediately kind of tabled as the matter of what to do for the evening comes up, as the sun is going down, and Simone mentions how the ferry apparently doesn't run at night. So, she offers her mansion to the gang, as she says that there are plenty of rooms in there, they could just stay the night if they wanted to, which the gang happily accepts, especially Fred, because it's clear he's starting to have some attraction to Lena, which I find amusing. So either way, the gang is assigned their rooms, and they all just kind of tuck in for the night. And they get ready. And basically, as dinner time rolls around, everybody's getting themselves all dressed up. We even get a nice little mythology gag as Freg tries on his old ascot and then goes, nah, and then just kind of throws it aside. But, of course, this is where the next haunting occurs, as while Scooby and Shaggy are getting themselves prepared for the dinner, or more specifically Shaggy, who trades out his regular trademark green shirt for a slightly nicer version of his green shirt before cutting some of his chin stubble. They end up seeing a second spirit in a basically a full-length mirror that was in their room, except this spirit is not of Morgan Moonscar or any of his crew. It's a Confederate soldier who immediately just comes floating out of the mirror, yelling at Scooby and Shaggy to get away, which of course causes them to run into Fred's room. As such, the rest of the gang go back into the room to see what's going on, and of course the ghost is gone. But Velma notices something strange about the mirror as she goes to investigate, and as she tries blowing dust away, she ends up blowing dust away, which causes her to fall over and get dust on her glasses. Though when she tries cleaning them, she finds that her cleaning cloth is gone, so Scooby cleans them for her. But either way, she goes in closer to see what's going on with the mirror, and it turns out that the mirror belonged to a Confederate colonel, with Simone confirming that during the Civil War, Confederate soldiers did hide out on the island to get away from Union soldiers. So it's very much puzzling, as it looks like that this island is kind of like a mishmash of all these different historical pieces. Like first, the mansion is made out of the pieces of Morgan Moonscar's pirate ship, and then likewise going off of this mirror, it's straight from the Civil War. It's peculiar in a sense, but it also kind of leads to something interesting that I like, that the spirits themselves are directly tied to something that was close to them in the living. Like, for example, Morgan Moonscar was haunting the kitchen because that's where pieces of his pirate ship were used to build the mansion, and then likewise, Scooby and Shaggy encounter the Confederate colonel's ghost in their room because the mirror he came out of belonged to him. I think that's interesting. But still adds some creepy factor, which, yes, even the Confederate soldier ghost is creepy as all hell. But either way, they once again try and brush under the rug as they all go to dinner, with Daphne, of course, still being all ecstatic to see all these weird, creepy stuff, which she's going to report on. But unfortunately, there's still trouble at dinner time, as one, Simone doesn't want Scooby eating at the table because he's a dog, and then likewise when he tries moving into the kitchen, well, there are cats in there, and of course, again, more hijinks ensue. As such, Scooby and Shaggy are asked to essentially just eat outside, with them camping out in the Mystery Machine, with Lena supplying them with a bunch of food that they can feast on. Although, again, they still encounter a bunch of cats, so they take the Mystery Machine further into the bayou so they can actually have a nice dinner. However, again, that's when more shit goes down, as suddenly as, unbeknownst to them, outside of the Mystery Machine, more of that weird green smoke, more of that weird green mist is going about. And while at first Scooby and Shaggy are just content to eat, eventually they're forced out of the Mystery Machine, because once again they did the hot pepper test, and of course they was so hot that they had to jump out and immediately wanted to cool their palates, which they did by dunking their faces in the bayou water. Not hygienic, but whatever. But either way, yeah, the green mist ends up flying straight into the ground surrounding the Mystery Machine, and from there, they encounter more zombies. Only this time it's a hodgepodge of pirates and Confederate soldiers, all of whom are just as creepy looking as the Moonscar zombie, and all of them moaning as they all try hobbling towards Shaggy and Scooby, who immediately just duck right into the Mystery Machine and just try and bolt away, which they managed to do. But one zombie managed to crawl on top of the Mystery Machine, so they unfortunately got a bit of a hitchhiker. As such, once again, back at the manor, the gang ends up hearing Scooby and Shaggy screaming, and so they decide they need to go investigate, with Lena and Simone supplying them with lanterns so they can see around. However, as they continue walking, they end up running into Bo again, and again, they're still suspicious about why he's out at all as well. As such, the gang decides they need to keep an eye on him, but they still need to look for Shaggy and Scooby. So, they split up, with Velma volunteering to go with Bo because she wants to keep an eye on him, and partially because Daphne's starting to get infatuated with Bo, and, well, that would distract her, while Fred and Daphne go off themselves. As such, both teams end up going off, and while there is some slight tension with Velma and Bo, as Velma still sees Bo as a suspect, he does alleviate some of it by saving Velma from some quicksand, so, hey, no harm, no foul. But eventually, Fred and Daphne, do eventually manage to find the Mystery Machine abandoned in the woods. Whereas, after the zombies attacked, Scooby and Shaggy just bolted and ran. And so they begin investigating it, finding the remains of Scooby and Shaggy's meals. But as they continue investigating it, a hand ends up reaching out and grabbing for Daphne's shoulder, which prompts her to grab it and judo flip whoever tried grabbing at her. And it turns out, it's another zombie, with Scooby and Shaggy immediately arriving afterwards. As such, when presented finally with this monster, immediately the Mystery Inc. does what it does best. They try and unmask the guy behind everything. As Fred hands the camera over to Shaggy, who immediately hands it to Daphne because he's too scared, and as he tries just pulling off the mask, quote unquote, of the zombie to see who it is beneath it. Is it the fisherman? Is it the ferryman? Is it the gardener? It's nobody. Because when Fred managed to finally dislodge the head, he doesn't pull off a mask. He pulls off the whole head. And they realize, oh shit, this thing is real, which does cause everyone to just start freaking out as they just start playing hot potato with the zombie's head, where it eventually ends up back on the zombie pirate's lap, and he just picks it up and then just reattaches it, which I kind of gotta give props to the zombie pirate. He literally is, it's clear he's conscious throughout all this, so why is he just sitting there and letting him do, why is he just sitting there and letting them do this? He doesn't do anything, doesn't even react, doesn't moan, doesn't try reaching out for them, no. He just sits there plopped on the ground in front of the Mystery Machine, lets them try ripping off his head, and then when they finally reattach it, he's just plops it back into place and then just slumps back down. It's kind of like chill guy. Gotta give him credit for that. However, with the confirmation that the zombies are not indeed men in costumes, they are real, immediately more shit starts going down as then once again that green mystic appears and then flies into other parts of the ground and more zombies appear. Only these ones are not soldiers or pirates or anything. They're other things. They're tourists, they're gypsies, they are gangsters, they're basically just a bunch of random people, and it's clear that these are all the people that vanished on the island over the years, and when confronted with these monsters, everyone just runs for the hills. Which leads to another awesome chase scene, and accompanying it is one of mine and probably many other people's favorite songs in this movie. Terror Time, which is a kick-ass, awesome song about just how this is all real and how everything's going down, how you can feel the terror creeping up on you as the monsters are getting closer. I can't do it justice. Terror Time is fucking awesome. I recommend just looking it up yourself. It's a great tune. It's a great tune. But basically, in the midst of all this chaos, Scooby and Shaggy end up accidentally falling into this cavern. Of course, the zombies don't follow after them, but as the pair continue walking around, they end up finding something strange. Specifically, they find wax dolls on a pedestal in front of a torch. Of course, the pair are wondering why are all these dolls here? But we soon end up getting an answer. As the pair pick them up, we end up cutting back to Fred and Daphne as they end up meeting back up with Velma and Bo. Which, yeah, they end up eventually confirming that. Which, yeah, they immediately impart what they've seen to Velma and Bo and tell them, yeah, the zombies are real. We saw them with our own eyes. Though, unfortunately, they don't have any proof because when everybody split up and ran away from the zombies, Fred tripped and dropped the camera in quicksand. So, all proof of the supernatural is now just down the drain, quite literally in this case. As everyone is lamenting on what to do next, Fred, Velma, and Daphne start floating, much like how Velma was floating in the kitchen. Only it turns out, this is actually a direct correlation to when Scooby and Shaggy pick up the dolls. Because, the dolls themselves do kind of resemble the trio, and as Scooby and Shaggy are messing with the dolls and playing with them, moving their limbs, the real versions of them also react as well. When they move an arm, the real person moves that exact arm. When they move a leg, the person moves a leg. It's clear that these are indeed voodoo dolls. But this matter is still raised of who created them. Though Scooby and Shaggy don't get a chance to ask those questions because as they're playing with the dolls, they end up getting chased out of the cavern by bats, which eventually leads them back to the zombies, which eventually causes them to run off further into the island. As such, with the voodoo dolls now gone, or voodoo dolls put down, Fred, Velma, and Daphne end up falling back to the earth, before they can question what happened to them, they hear some screaming. And it's here that I should probably mention a detail that I forgot. Like, before everyone split up, they heard Lena screaming back at the mansion, and they realized, oh shit, she and Simone must be in danger, we gotta go take care of that. And basically they heard the scream again, so that pretty much further encourages them to go and meet up with the ladies. So basically, the quartet of people end up going back to the manor, but they find it strangely deserted with the power out as they try flipping on some light switches, but nothing comes up, and there doesn't seem to be any sign of Lena or Simone. However, as everyone is investigating the manor, Fred ends up accidentally figuring out where they went, as he tries going upstairs. The stairs end up caving in and lead to a secret passageway where he runs into Lena. As such, everyone meets up with Lena, and she explains what happened. That after the gang went to go look for Scooby and Shaggy, they wound up having their own. Lena and Simone wound up having their own encounter with the zombies, and to try and fend them off, Simone tried open up a secret passageway that had been made in the manor since the Civil War. But unfortunately, the passageway didn't do so good as the zombies managed to come in and dragged Simone away. Something that Zelma is a little curious about as she begins investigating the footprints in the cavern below. As such, immediately everyone decides they need to go look for Simone, and they immediately start following the footprints to find her, which of course leads them further and further into the cavern. But once they get inside, once they get further in, they end up finding the same place that Scooby and Shaggy went to. And it's a lot bigger and more vast than people realize, as there are more torches lining the place, and it looks like a ritual ground. Something is clearly off about this place. And Velma immediately starts asking Lena what the deal is. Yeah, it turns out the footprints that she'd been looking at, they weren't zombies' footprints. They were the footprints of Simone's heels. Meaning she wasn't dragged off, she walked. Meaning Lena lied. And, well, we soon see who the real bad guys are in the situation, as everyone hears a creaking as a hole in the ceiling is opened up, and we see the one that's doing it is Simone, who immediately congratulates Velma for deducing that, but it's too little too late, as she ends up holding up the dolls of Fred, the doll for Fred, and a doll for Bo, throwing in the wall, causing the real Fred and Bo to fly into a wall as well. No, actually, no. She had Daphne and Velma, sorry. It's Lena that has Bo and Fred's dolls, and they both just throw them into a wall and tie up the dolls, resulting in the quartet being tied up in the real world. As such, immediately Velma starts damning Simone for this, saying that she won't get away with it, or maybe it's Daphne, I forget which one. But Simone just kind of laughs in her face and says, I've been getting away with this for 200 years. Before she suddenly transforms. Well, kinda, sorta. She and Lena transform into cat creatures. Well, again, kind of, sort of. They end up getting claws at the ends of their hands, and they end up getting their ears turned into cat ears, and they end up getting cat features on their faces, but for the most part, they're mostly still humanoid. And so, yeah, it turns out that the pair of ladies are actually monsters themselves. And it turns out Shaggy and Scooby are no better off. As they're running across the island, they eventually make it back to the docks, where they find Jacques coming back with the ferry. And at first, Shaggy and Scooby think that they're safe and sound, only for Jacques to transform into a cat creature too. Only this one is bigger, this one's bigger, burlier, and covered in more hair, and he immediately just starts chasing Shaggy and Scooby. As such, immediately questions are raised as to what the heck's going on, as Velma starts questioning Simone about what's going on, and she starts spilling the beans. As it turns out, yeah, all of this kind of ties back to Morgan Moonscar. Specifically, 200 years ago, Simone and Lena were once pilgrims whose group had come to this island in the bayou to celebrate the harvest moon. And specifically, they were making offerings to a cat god that she and her people worshipped. And basically, it was like a regular harvest festival. They made offerings. They sat down and had dinner. They danced. They sung. It was all just some nice bits of merriment. Unfortunately, though, that's when tragedy struck. You see, earlier in the movie, they mentioned how the bayou, this particular bayou, used to be a place that pirates used to, like, to hold up shop to hide from the authorities. And, well, it turns out Morgan Moonscar and his crew came to the island themselves, as they had brought along treasure that they were trying to hide, so the authorities wouldn't come after them. And upon arriving on the island, they found this group of people and immediately started terrorizing them, just knocking over their tables, their food, just everything, and causing a commotion. While Lena and Simone managed to get away from everyone, or managed to get away safe and sound, sadly the rest of their group was not so lucky, as Moonscar and his crew managed to usher them into the bayou, where they were eaten by alligators. Not a fun fate. As such, Lena and Simone wound up hiding out in the caves beneath the island, where they had their altar of their cat god, and pretty much just on that night of the harvest moon, they prayed for vengeance, for a curse to be planted on the pirates themselves, so that they may suffer the way that Lena and Simone suffered. And their cat god heard their prayers, immediately transforming the pair into a pair of cat monsters, who immediately attacked Moonscar and his crew, siphoning out his life force. Unfortunately, though, this new power came at a price. It turns out that being these cat creatures, they were given eternal life, but that also meant that they needed to also consistently feed. As every harvest moon, they had to drain the life force of someone else in order to keep themselves going, which meant that anytime someone came to the island and happened to be there on this harvest moon, Lena and Simone would attack, everybody that's come to the island since has typically followed the same fate. Like the pepper plantation they have, that was brought here by people who were trying to start harvesting the peppers, which they were the ones that originally built the manor, and Lena and Simone attacked them. And then likewise, every single time they've needed someone feeding, they've either relied on people's blatant curiosity to come to the island to feast on them, or they lured them themselves, which is why Lena was in the market the day she met Mystery Inc. because the harvest moon was coming up that evening, and they needed sacrifices to be made. And well, Lena herself even says that she's had years of practice doing it. And basically that's why they want the gang here. And that's also why the zombies have risen at all, because you see, the spirits of the people that Simone and Lena drained, they aren't exactly happy with what the pair is doing, which is why all the ghosts and zombies have been haunting the place. They haven't been trying to hurt anyone. They have been quite literally trying to scare the gang off for their own safety, because they knew if they stay long enough, they will end up exactly like them, just shriveled up husks and just rotting in the ground. I like that. I like that. It's a nice twist. Showcase that the monsters that are advertised on the bill are actually your allies rather than your enemies, like you're led to believe. So, and it also kind of gives more credence to how chill some of the zombies were, because going off the idea that the zombies were actually trying to help everyone, it explains some of their behavior. Like, it explains why that one pirate just kind of sat back and let Fred and Daphne pull at his head, because he probably is like, okay, this is happening now, just let it happen. And then likewise again, even and like earlier during the terror time segment, as everything was running around, Scooby wound up falling into the bayou and had to run away from alligators. And as Shaggy tried to grab a vine to save him, one zombie tapped him on the shoulder and gave him one. Again, I like that. Nice stuff. But it still adds. It's definitely a twist. It's definitely an interesting. It definitely is an interesting twist. Not too great, not too big of a twist, but still an interesting. It's still an interesting idea. But of course, that also leads back to Jock. Why is he a cat creature? Well, if they're going to be luring people back to the island anyway, then they need a ferry driver, and Jacques himself wanted immortality, so they shared their power with him. And basically, he's, like I said, he's just the go-between. Basically, his cut of the pie is that he gets immortality, and he gets immortality and doesn't have to die, and in return, he just keeps supplying new victims he supplies new victims that he, Lena, and Simone can feast upon. And basically, that's part of the reason why he's chasing Scooby and Shaggy, because they're going to be his meal, with even Simone and Lena laughing at how they didn't even bother making voodoo dolls for Scooby and Shaggy because they were just too stupid. However, Scooby and Shaggy are still being chased around the island by Jacques, who does eventually manage to catch up with them, but thankfully the pair are saved as a group of zombies end up ganging up on Jacques, causing Scooby and Shaggy to run off until eventually they end up back at the cave, the time of feasting is upon them, because the thing is, in order for Simone and Lena to keep their immortality going, they need to feast during the night of the harvest moon, specifically at midnight, because they have a moon dial in that little cave, and so when it hits midnight, that's when they can feast, and that's when they can feast, so the hour is upon them, and so immediately, Lena and Simone just close in on the other members of Mystery Inc. However, that's when Scooby and Shaggy end up coming in and accidentally knock the pair of cat ladies over, and this also leads to a nice little variant on the meddling kids line, because throughout the whole movie, Simone has just been annoyed at having Scooby there at all, and every time he does little shenanigans, she gets angrier and angrier at him, until finally, at this point, she finally just yells out, "I've had it with that meddling dog!" I don't know, I love that. As such, the pair end up fully transforming into cat creatures, much like Jacques, now actually getting fur covering their bodies and now looking and acting a lot more feral, as they zero in on Scooby and Shaggy, who, in the midst of all the chaos, they end up accidentally knocking over the voodoo dolls for the rest of the gang and Bo, which eventually, as they're running around, one of the dolls, specifically Velma's, gets kicked over to Velma, and sorry, I forgot to mention this. Part of the reason why the voodoo dolls are able to work like they are is because Simone and Lena had gathered little bits of fabric from the people that the dolls corresponded to, and so likewise, that's where Velma's cleaning cloth went, so I dig that. But basically, Velma is able to get close to her doll and starts shimmying off the rope surrounding it, so she gets untied. At which point she starts untying the dolls for Daphne, Fred, and Bo. Though as they're untying, they realize something. They found some bits and pieces of fabric belonging to Simone and Lena. But either way, going back to Scooby and Shaggy, they're continually still being chased by the cat creatures, and while the zombies do eventually come in to try and help everyone, well, again, Scooby and Shaggy are more hesitant to trust them, because they're still friggin' zombies, and Scooby and Shaggy are Scooby and Shaggy. Of course, they're not gonna, and they weren't there for the big revelation, so whatever. But basically, in the midst of the chaos, eventually Lena and Simone do manage to grab Scooby and Shaggy, and starts siphoning out their life force. And yeah, that looks legitimately creepy, seeing the pair start shriveling up as their life force is getting drained from them. However, that's immediately stopped as they're both flung into a wall, letting go of the pair. Of course, they're a little confused as to what's going on before they see Velma and Daphne holding up dolls that look like them and donned in some of their clothes. And so from there, they just start playing with the dolls and screwing with Lena and Simone, which it does lead to some nice little minor slapstick as they call Simone to smack Lena, knocking her over, and Lena just kind of looks at Simone like, "What the hell?" I like that. I like that. It's fun. But unfortunately, the strategy doesn't work very much, as in the midst of the chaos, Jacques manages to knock the dolls out of their grasp. So immediately, Lena, and Simone start zeroing in on the survivors, and while they try knocking them aside with fire, specifically from a torch, Jacques just knocks it out of their hands. So it looks like everyone is doomed, until the trio starts smoking. Why? Because they missed their moment. It turns out that in the midst of all the chaos, they weren't able to drain everyone fast enough, and so the hour of feasting is past, meaning that they have missed their time is up, and so they start dying. They just start screaming in agony as the smoke starts getting thicker and thicker, until eventually their flesh literally just burns right off their bodies, and they're nothing but skeletal husks that fall to the ground. And in the meantime, the zombies, well, now that their spirits have been avenged, they all end up falling apart as well, as their spirits leave their bodies and go off to the afterlife, with the spirit of the Confederate colonel staying behind one last time to give a salute and say thank you. So, yep, the danger is over. The monsters have been defeated, and everyone is a-okay. But there's still the matter of what are they going to do. How are they going to tell this story to people? After all, if they went and reported to the police, oh yeah, by the way, the owners of this island were actually cat monsters, no one would really believe them. But Bo says that he can give them more credit because, well, there's the matter of his little mystery, and it turns out he's a police detective, and part of the reason why he was on the island at all was because he was also investigating the disappearances of all these people, which is why he had dug that giant hole. He was looking for evidence of these people that vanished, which I guess kind of makes sense, because odds are, if someone was trying to hide a dead body, they would try and bury them pretty deep, so I can understand why he digs such a big hole. Although he mentions how even if he went and told his superiors about what he saw today, they probably wouldn't believe him. But Daphne thinks, hey, Bo, you ever want to be on television? So at the very least, she's got someone that can talk about the story. As such, with the sun now coming up, the gang and Bo go back to the ferry as they realize they have to get back to the mainland. Though Bo laments that he's always kind of been interested in mystery stories, which Velma immediately likes. So I kind of dig that. Like that. And so, of course, Shaggy and Scooby are getting food for the road because Lena's cooking was no lie. So they grab whatever food they can and get back on the ship, forgot his name again, sorry. They disrupt Snakebite again just as he catches Big Mona, and basically everyone goes out safe and sound, though as Scooby starts trying to enjoy his meal, it turns out some of Simone's cats manage to sneak on board the ship. And it's clear there's still a bit of supernatural voodoo in them as their eyes start glowing, and Scooby is now a little freaked out by them. Though the after credits showcase they kind of made peace as Scooby gives them some milk and cat food. So, all's well that ends well. So, yeah, that was Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island. And my thoughts on the film? It's still a pretty damn good time. It's not a perfect movie, but for what it is, it's just damn near enjoyable. At its core, it is still a Scooby-Doo movie. And when it comes down to Scooby-Doo, I don't expect anything like too complex or gripping or anything like that. I just expect an entertaining mystery/ghost story. It doesn't have to be like too big of a mystery, but there is still have to be a mystery there. And while it is, and of course, like with all Scooby-Doo mysteries, it of course likes to bring out all the key players that you want to keep your eye on. We have the angry fisherman who hates tourists coming into his place. We got Jock, the friendly ferryman who warns the gang about all the people who go into the bayou and never come out. We got Bo, who seems more hardened and closed off. And then you got Lena and Simone, while Lena is more friendly and outgoing, Simone is more stern and keeps a distance. And while she's welcoming enough, there's still an air to her. So, of course, it definitely still follows all the standard tropes with Scooby-Doo. Even down to the monsters and how they typically like haunting Shaggy and Scooby instead of going after the rest of the gang, which you think at some point the gang would start taking Scooby and Shaggy at their word, because every time they see the monsters and then they come back and the monster's gone, the gang's like skeptical, like, are you sure you saw that? It's not here now. But you encounter these things later. You should know that Shaggy and Scooby are not messing with you guys. And yeah, I know they're cowards, but they are cowards that at least try and report on exactly what they've seen. And if you're here solving a mystery involving ghosts and missing people, maybe, just maybe, you might want to listen to the two guys who seem to have had who seem to have had an encounter with a supernatural entity is all I'm saying. So yeah, like I said though, it still typically follows the standard Scooby-Doo fare. However, you have to remember one very important thing about this movie. This is probably the first time in the Scooby-Doo movies where they actually encountered something genuinely supernatural. Again, we're gonna pretend that Scooby-Doo Return to Zombie Island does not exist in this regard, and just solely focus on what we see in this movie. Because what we see in the movie is legitimately fucking creepy. This is one of the few instances, this was probably one of the first instances, well, so far, kind of. We'll get to those movies at some point in the future, but this is probably one of the biggest instances in like mainline Scooby-Doo stuff, where the entire gang encounters a legitimate monster. And I'm not counting stuff like, say, the Boo Brothers or Ghoul School or Reluctant Werewolf as, again, those stuff I would kind of consider like side stories, so to speak. And even then, those films were exclusively focused on Shaggy and Scooby. This is the first time that they encounter where the monsters of the piece that are hunting everyone, they are legit, they are real. And the thing is, the difference between Zombie Island and the movies I just mentioned, in those movies, the ghosts were not really legitimate. The ghosts were more friendly. The Boo Brothers were more like a ghostly version of the Three Stooges. The girls that they encountered in the Ghoul School were friendly, nice, and welcoming, and ultimately didn't mean any genuine harm. And then hell, even in Reluctant Werewolf, all the monsters wanted to do was do a race, so whatever. But then you have this movie, and the monsters look legitimately fucking creepy. When you first see the ghost of Morgan Moonscar, it's just chilling to see him there. And with the added addition that you could only really see his spirit when the camera was set a certain way, it just makes it all that much more creepy when he pops in. And then you add on the zombies, that definitely gives a chill up your spine, because the very first time you see the zombie of Morgan Moonscar, you are given the impression that this guy is not to be messed with. Like, just to see this mass of bones rise up, reform itself, regrow its flesh, and the way it's sagging off him, the way he moves, and the way he only just speaks in guttural moans which seem to echo all across the area, it's just legitimately fucking scary. And the rest of the zombies continue that trend throughout the movie. Every time you see them, it just feels legitimately scary. And when I saw this film as a kid, it scared the piss out of me seeing those zombies rising up from their graves and reaching out for the main cast, as all of them just moaning and groaning as they tried to get closer to them. And again, I know with retrospect, you know that the zombies don't genuinely mean any harm, and they're probably just doing whatever they can to warn everyone, get the hell off this island, it's a bad place. But in a way, it also kind of acts a nice little inverse of what you also get from a Scooby-Doo mystery, because while the movie still follows the typical tropes that a Scooby-Doo mystery establishes, this is one of the first times the monsters try to scare everyone away for their own safety. In this case, the zombies and the ghosts are trying to get Mystery Inc. to leave the island, because they know if they stay here when the harvest moon comes out, they'll be drained of their vital life essence, and they don't want that to happen. So, I like that little inverse on the typical Scooby-Doo formula there, as not only are the monsters real this time around, but they actually mean you no harm. In fact, the real monsters are the people that own the island, which I'll give credit where it's due. While it's not a complex mystery about what's really going on, I do like some of the subtle hints that Simone and Lena are clearly up to something. And knowing in advance what they do, it allows you to pick up more on some of the hints in the mystery. Like, for example, when Mystery Inc. has their first encounter with the ghost of Morgan Moonscar, Simone is legitimately surprised that they want to stay. And in many regards, I think she actually starts kind of playing up the fear of the whole thing, as she talks about, oh, the haunting could just be starting, and knowing that, but then likewise when more things come up, she says, I told you it would get worse, I'm a little afraid. Like, it looks like she's just playing it up for the sake of making it look like she's scared, when in reality, this is probably one of the few instances where these appearances are actually beneficial. Because here's the thing, odds are they've had encounters with the ghosts and zombies in the past. Sorry, Chitty came back in. So, They are familiar with how they operate, and considering that these bitches are the ones who have been draining all the visitors to their island dry. Hold on a second, I feel a sneeze coming on. Sorry about that, but yeah, like I said, considering that these two are the ones that are draining all the denizens of their island dry, it explains that basically the odds are these ghosts would probably be seen as a hindrance, because after all, the people of the zombies we see the people that come here that came to the island were just that some of them are just passers through. Of course, we got some people who are hiding out on the island, like with the pirates and the gangsters. But then you got people like the plantation owners, or the gypsies, or the fucking tourists. These are just people who are probably coming to the island to sightsee. And then, likewise, odds are, in many other circumstances, the zombies and the ghosts will probably be a nice indicator for them to get the hell out. But then here they have these perfect band of suckers who are just coming around saying they want to find the scary stuff. So they decide, well, then we'll just play it up a bit, which I like that. And again, one of the other details I liked with the haunting was how the ghosts were all really tied to their personal effects from when they were alive. Like, when they were haunting them as ghosts, the ghosts tended to hang around places in the mansion that corresponded to things that they had when they were alive. Like Moonscar was haunting the kitchen because the wood that was used to build the kitchen was made from his ship. The Confederate colonel was haunting the mirror because it belonged to him when he was alive. And then of course the zombies are obvious. These are their bodies buried beneath the bayou and the island. Of course they'd be naturally tied to them. So I like that little detail. It's a very cool idea, and again, that also acts as a nice little subtle hint that Simone and Lena are up to something, because, well, why is their manor made up of all these bits and pieces from different time periods, and why is it being haunted by ghosts from different eras? Something is clearly amiss here. I like that. That is a nice little subtle hint. And then again, kind of going off to how and then again, while they don't really hint at, and again, while there aren't really a lot of hints, so to speak, at the very least, I do like how you do learn the reveal. And again, come here, Chindy. I do like the inverse, that ultimately the monsters really meant the gang no harm in the end. So I like that. It's pretty nice. And again, I will give credit where it's due. The cat monster designs legitimately look disturbing. When Simone and Lena first take on their cat-like appearances, it looks so like Uncanny Valley, seeing these cat faces superimposed on their heads. And then likewise, when they go full feral and turn into full cat monsters, it does feel legitimately off-putting. So again, I dig it. I like it. What do I think of the film as a whole? Is there anything really noteworthy about it? Well, I guess no. Like, in a way, it's, like I said, a standard Scooby-Doo mystery. There's something odd going on in the background. There are monsters afoot, and the gang have to go in and investigate. Yes, there are some twists and turns that are uncommon for Scooby-Doo for the Scooby-Doo franchise in this film, like with having the monsters be legitimately real, and then likewise showcasing that the monsters are not the real threat. It's the people who own the island. I do like that. But at its core, the story structure is like a standard Scooby-Doo thing, with unmasking the bad guy, learning what their plan is, why they're doing all this, what the monsters play into it. And yes, it does have a bit more grandiosity by showcasing the bad guys aren't just real estate brokers trying to scare people off, or someone trying to garner attention for some kind of sideshow attraction or whatever. So it does give a bit more weight to the threat that's going on. But ultimately, when you go into the movie, a lot of what you expect is what you're going to see. We get some nice slapstick and antics from the gang, especially Scooby and Shaggy. You get some legitimately nice scares. You get some questions. You see the list of suspects. Again, hold on a second. Again, sorry, Chinny wanted to be let out. But like I said, there we got a list of suspects. We got the creepy guy. We got the seemingly mild-mannered guy. We got someone that looks suspicious but ultimately is a nice guy. It still follows the typical Scooby-Doo story trends, but like with any good Scooby-Doo story, that's not what you're here for. It helps all that stuff is there to help get you to the spooks, the chills, the thrills, the scares, and seeing the monsters. And that stuff is legitimately good. Again, the designs for the ghosts and the zombies are honestly very fucking disturbing, and they really kind of take the thing to a new it kind of takes everything to a new level, especially again how they move, how they act, how they haunt. It definitely gives you the chills, and as a kid it really did legitimately scare me. As an adult I can see the invisible string, so to speak, behind it, but I can't deny that there's still a certain air to the off-put to the whole thing that just gives you the right sense of an off-putting nature. So again, I dig that, and again, I do like how, and in a way, the story still has a lot of weight to it, because it does still go on to talk about, because again, going off to how ultimately it's revealed the monsters are actually the good guys, and the real real monsters are these two women who are draining people. I like that little inverse, but I do still like that the inverse surrounding that, and ultimately again going off of how this is a big ritual, it does carry a little bit more weight to it. Ultimately, what I do like about the movie, ultimately, the real treat of the movie is going to the titular zombie island, seeing the undead, seeing them solve the myth, and just kind of seeing them solve the mystery with their typical Scooby-Doo hijinks and antics. Which, again, the hijinks and antics are still fun. We got some legitimately funny stuff with Scooby and Shaggy, as we always do. The gang still has the chemistry they normally do, while having some honestly funny mythology gags thrown in there, like how Fred likes his ascot, and in the outfit he wears in the movie, he just completely abandons it. Or how Shaggy's outfits are literally just the same, are still literally just the same costume, or the same set of clothes, just in spades, so to speak. Of course we get Scooby and Shaggy just having their contest for who can eat the most food, and Scooby still stealing Shaggy's stuff, which I like. I do legitimately like that. And on top, and ultimately, even the finale. Sorry, I'm trying to remember. And ultimately, even the ending where they have their little wrap up and all go off into the sunset, it still feels nice and genuinely earned. So on the whole, I think Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island, while not being too grand or anything, is still a pretty damn good Scooby-Doo movie. And I honestly think that all the attention that it still gets even to this day is still very much warranted. It feels like another level of Scooby-Doo, as the real monsters do give it a whole other weight to it. But ultimately, it's still Scooby-Doo. You still got Mystery Inc. You still got a mystery going on. You got the typical hijinks. You got the good dynamics. You got the suspicious characters. You got the meddling kids and all that stuff. On the whole, it's still a legitimately good movie, filled with some legitimately undisturbing scenery, visuals, some nice little hints at what's really going on, some nice dynamics with everyone, and ultimately wrapping everything up in a nice little package that you always can expect from Scooby-Doo and Co. So, yeah, ultimately, like I said, Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island is still a pretty damn good time, and I recommend it if you're a fan of Scooby-Doo. So, yeah, I think that's really all I have to say. I thank you for watching this video. I'm Samuel Johnson, and I hope to see you next week as we see the gang tackle even more spooks and scares, as we see the film that introduced the Hex Girls to the Scooby-Doo mythos with Scooby-Doo and the Witch's Ghost.